In 15 years in Hollywood, no one in Hollywood has a memory of going to a sold-out Kevin Hart show, there being a line for him ever getting a standing ovation at any comedy club. He already had his deals when he got here. Have we heard of a comedian that came to L.A. and in his first year in L.A. he had his own sitcom on network television and had his own movie called Soul Plane that he was leading? No, we've never heard of that before that person or since that person.
My frustration with Katt Williams comes from, you keep pointing at Hollywood. Hollywood this, the white man, this, and this. When do you take responsibility for your actions? You were set up to be the star. You didn't show up to work. You off promo shoots. You off your promo trips that they had set up for you. You became a risk to the studios, which is why the studios stopped with you.
Why was he a risk?
He chose.
Okay.
Take responsibility for what you chose and say, you know what? I gotta fix me, and I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna stand up for comedy.
Yo, what's good, everybody? You're not gonna believe what just went down. Kevin Hart just sat down with Carmelo Anthony on the 7 p.m. in Brooklyn podcast, and he dropped a bombshell that nobody saw coming. We're talking about the beef that had the entire comedy world divided for over a decade. Katt Williams, Mike Epps, Kevin Hart. But here's where it gets crazy. Kevin just revealed that he's been picking up the phone, having real conversations. And what they're planning together? Man, it might just shake up the entire comedy game forever. But before we get to what's coming next, we need to talk about how deep this situation really went. Because what Kevin said about why they were beefing, that's going to change how you see everything. Stick around because the projects they're discussing, nobody's ready for what's about to happen. All right, let's rewind the clock. To really understand how massive this reconciliation is, you gotta know just how deep the tension ran between Kevin and Mike Epps. We're talking about a feud that lasted over 10 years. Mike Epps came out in 2014 and called Kevin Hart overrated. Just like that. And from there, man, it was on. Instagram comments became a battlefield. Interviews turned into roast sessions. But here's the moment that really set everything off. 2018. Mike Epps posted a picture with Eddie Murphy on Instagram. Some fan jumped in the comments and said, "Eddie Murphy funnier than Kevin Hart still." And Mike's response? "Everybody is." Just 2 words. But those 2 words ignited a wildfire. Kevin fired back, calling Mike a sad individual in the comments. He talked about how he'd reached out multiple times, tried to squash things face to face, but Mike kept the negativity going. And that's when you knew it was personal. This wasn't just comedy rivalry anymore. This was real animosity. They tried to make peace in 2017, posted a video together saying everything was cool, but within months, they were back at each other's throats. But what nobody knew back then was that the real storm was still coming. January 3rd, 2024. That's a date that's gonna live in comedy history forever. Katt Williams sat down with Shannon Sharpe on the Club Shay podcast. And what happened next? Man, he burned the entire comedy industry to the ground. Katt didn't just come with smoke. He came with a flamethrower. He said, "In 15 years in Hollywood, no one has a memory of going to a sold-out Kevin Hart show, there being a line for him, ever getting a standing ovation at any comedy club." But he didn't stop there. Katt called Kevin an industry plant. He said Kevin already had his deals when he got to Hollywood, that the success wasn't earned, it was manufactured. This interview didn't just go viral, it went nuclear. We're talking 32 million views in the first 4 days. Twitter was on fire. Instagram was flooded with clips. TikTok couldn't stop talking about it. And Kevin? Kevin stayed quiet, at first. While everybody was waiting for Kevin to clap back, to go to war like the old days with Mike Epps, he did something different. He posted on Twitter, called the whole thing honestly sad, and then promoted his Netflix movie, Lift. Kevin literally used Katt's viral moment to market his own project. When people kept asking him about Katt's accusations, Kevin kept his cool. He told Fox 5 DC, "You don't entertain the circus, you watch it." A lot of people thought Kevin was being soft, but what nobody realized, Kevin was playing a completely different game. Because while everyone was focused on the drama, Kevin was doing something behind the scenes that would change everything. So here we are, November 2024. Kevin Hart sits down on 7 p.m. in Brooklyn, and he finally opens up about what's really been happening. And what he revealed? It's gonna make you rethink everything. Kevin said something simple but powerful. Picking up the phone does a lot. Having direct conversations and removing the middleman does a lot. Think about that. For years, these guys were beefing through Instagram comments, through interviews, through subliminal shots. They were letting blogs, fans, and social media dictate the narrative. But then, they just picked up the phone. It sounds so simple, right? But that's exactly why it took so long. Pride gets in the way, ego gets in the way. But Kevin said something else that hit different. We all got older, and I think our conversations have gotten better. Age and maturity. That's what it took. Not a public call-out, not a viral clapback, just getting older and realizing that life's too short. Kevin reached out to both Mike and Katt. Direct conversations, man to man, no cameras, no blogs, no middlemen. And those conversations went well. So well that they're not just squashing beef, they're actually talking about working together. But before we get to what they're planning, Kevin revealed the real reason why they were beefing in the first place. You know what's interesting? Kevin said the beef was never really about respect. Let that sink in. All those years of shots being fired, all that tension, and it wasn't because they didn't respect each other's talent. So what was it really about? Competition, or more specifically, the frustration of not competing together. Kevin broke it down like this. He said it was about the idea of what we felt we should be doing together and that we weren't. And because they weren't working together, assumptions started getting made. Feelings started developing, animosity started creeping in. Think about that. These are three of the biggest names in comedy. Kevin Hart, selling out arenas worldwide. Mike Epps, a legend who helped define comedy in the 2000s. Katt Williams, one of the most naturally gifted comedians to ever touch a microphone. And they're all doing their own thing, watching each other succeed, but never coming together. And over time, that created resentment. Not because they didn't respect the talent, but because they felt like they should be collaborating. So assumptions got made. He thinks he's too good to work with me. He's gatekeeping opportunities. Whether those assumptions were true didn't even matter anymore. But here's where Kevin's mindset shifted. He started thinking about legacy, about the bigger picture. Kevin said, "We have a job to do, and that job is to be better examples, mending whatever the problems were and allowing this generation to see we're not afraid to do that. It alleviates the future world of conflict for them." Man, that's powerful. Think about how many young comedians are watching Kevin, Katt, and Mike. Think about how many of them have been taught that beef is just part of the game. But what if the legends showed them something different? What if instead of perpetual beef, they showed what reconciliation looks like? And that brings us to what they're actually planning. All right, this is where it gets really interesting. Kevin didn't just say they squashed the beef. He said they're talking about doing a couple different things together. There's great ideation happening about how they can shake the culture. And then he dropped this gem. That's finally a way for us all to share the screen together. That's one thing that we don't have that frustrates me. Kevin brought up Harlem Nights as the perfect example. That 1989 classic had Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Red Fox, Charlie Murphy, Robin Harris, all the legends on one screen creating magic together. And Kevin's point is, why doesn't this generation have that? Think about it. We've got Kevin Hart selling out stadiums. Katt Williams is still one of the sharpest comedians alive. Mike Epps has been a staple in comedy for decades. But when's the last time we saw them all together in one project? We haven't. And that's the problem Kevin's trying to fix. Now, he didn't reveal exactly what they're working on. But the fact that these conversations are even happening, that's massive. Could it be a movie? A comedy special? A tour? We don't know yet. But whatever it is, the culture's been starving for it. But this isn't just about Kevin, Katt, and Mike anymore. This is about setting a precedent. This is about showing the younger generation that it's possible to squash beef, that it's possible to work together. And man, we need that message, because the comedy game has been fractured for too long. Too much beef, too much tension, too many talented people refusing to work together because of pride or ego. But if Kevin, Katt, and Mike can do it, that changes the entire landscape. That shows every comedian coming up that there's another way. Yo, real quick, if you're enjoying this breakdown, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop a like if you think this reconciliation is good for comedy, and let me know in the comments. Do you think this piece is gonna last? Are you excited about the potential projects? I want to hear your thoughts. All right, let's wrap this up. Let's zoom out and talk about what this reconciliation really represents. Because this is bigger than just three comedians squashing beef. This is about the culture of comedy itself. For too long, the narrative in comedy has been about competition over collaboration, about who's selling more tickets, who's getting the bigger Netflix deal, who's funnier. And don't get me wrong, healthy competition pushes people to be better. But somewhere along the way, competition turned into combat. Kevin, Katt, and Mike coming together challenges that entire narrative. It says, yeah, we can compete and collaborate. Think about what Kevin said about Harlem Nights. That movie wasn't just entertainment, it was a cultural moment. It was proof that when legends come together, they create something that transcends individual success. This reconciliation could change that. If they can create their own Harlem Nights moment, that sets a new standard. That shows the younger generation what's possible when ego takes a backseat to vision. And honestly, that might be the most powerful thing to come out of all this. Not the projects they create, not the money they make, but the example they set. The message that it's okay to grow, to admit that beef isn't worth it, and to come together for something bigger. Because at the end of the day, comedy is supposed to bring people together. And when the comedians themselves are divided, that energy trickles down to the audience. But when the comedians come together, that changes everything. That creates a ripple effect throughout the entire culture. So yeah, Kevin Hart picking up the phone? It seems like a small thing, but it might be one of the most important things to happen in comedy in years. So here's where we're at. Kevin Hart revealed that he's been having real conversations with both Katt Williams and Mike Epps. Not through social media, not through subliminal shots, but actual phone calls, direct communication. And those conversations have led to something bigger. They're discussing collaborative projects. They're talking about creating a moment that rivals Harlem Nights. They're trying to give this generation something we've been desperately missing. But more than that, they're trying to set an example. They're trying to show the next generation that beef doesn't have to be permanent, that there's more power in unity than division. Will it be perfect? Probably not. But the fact that they're willing to try, that's massive. So whether you're Team Kevin, Team Katt, or Team Mike, one thing's for sure. The comedy game is about to get interesting. And if these three can pull off what they're talking about, we're all winners. The culture wins, the fans win, and most importantly, the next generation wins. Make sure you're subscribed because we're going to be following this story closely. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What kind of project do you want to see them do together? Until next time, stay locked in.